Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the winners in the U.S. presidential election. We'll talk about what Harris's historic win means for Caribbean Americans. Caribbean Americans also score victories in U.S. congressional and local races. We'll break down the election with People's Politics host Marlon Hill. St. Kitts and Nevis is leaving CARICOM's so-called travel bubble. Tourists in Bermuda are fined thousands of dollars for breaking quarantine rules. Police in Guyana offer a $3 million reward for information in the murder of 3 teenage boys. The CDC is lifting its no-sail order, clearing the way for cruise ships to return to the Caribbean. And we talked to Guyanese-born children's book author Yolanda T. Marshall about bringing the culture and flavors of the Caribbean to young readers.
This is the Caribbean Times News with Alisha Davis.
I'm Alisha Davis in New York. Thanks for watching. And we begin with our top story, Joe Biden winning the U.S. presidential election. That would make Kamala Harris the vice president-elect and the first woman and the first person of Caribbean American heritage on a winning U.S. presidential ticket. Republicans appear to have maintained their majority in the Senate, and the Democrats will keep their majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. Well, Caribbean Americans also scored big wins in state and local elections throughout the U.S. New York Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, the daughter of Jamaican immigrants, won re-election by a landslide. Clarke, who represents a predominantly Caribbean district in Brooklyn, defeated a Haitian-American Republican challenger, Constantine Jean-Pierre. In Florida, Christopher Benjamin, the son of immigrants from St. Kitts and Nevis, was elected to represent the 107th district in the state's House of Representatives. And Bahamian-American Chevron Jones has secured a seat in Florida's state Senate, becoming the first openly gay state senator elected in Florida. Now, we're going to have much more on the U.S. election and what it means for Caribbean Americans and the Caribbean region with People's Politics host Marlon Hill later in the show. Well, St. Kitts and Nevis is leaving the CARICOM travel bubble in an effort to protect its citizens from COVID-19. The decision was made after discussions between Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris and the country's cabinet and coronavirus task force. Dr. Harris said that being in the bubble with other countries, some of which are considered a higher risk with less strict COVID-19 protocols, could expose citizens to the virus. He added that since the travel bubble was announced, some countries are now experiencing new spikes in cases. 2 tourists in Bermuda were fined thousands of U.S. dollars for breaching the country's quarantine guidelines to attend a wedding. The Minister of Health, Kim Wilson, recently threatened to prosecute people who breached the country's strict COVID-19 guidelines. Well, the $2,500 fine comes as Bermuda is seeing an increase in reported coronavirus cases. Among the country's new cases were a visitor and 3 returning residents that all tested positive on their 4th-day checkup. Meanwhile, the CDC has lifted its no-sail order for ships in U.S. ports, clearing the way for cruise ships to return to the Caribbean. Jamaica's Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett said that the decision is a win not only for their country, but others in the Caribbean that depend on cruises for tourism. The cruise industry came to a halt in March, and Bartlett said countries can now begin preparations for their ships to meet the necessary requirements to resume cruise travel. Meanwhile, airline travel is growing in Guyana, with 4 airlines applying to begin flying to the country. Public Works Minister Juan Edgehill recently announced that Virgin Atlantic, WestJet, Intercaribbean, and Fly Always have all applied to begin scheduled flights to Guyana. With the discovery of oil, Guyana is predicted to have one of the fastest growing economies in the world. The minister said that the government's goal is to ensure that airports and airspaces in the country are upgraded to facilitate travel from around the globe. Well, coming up on Caribbean Times News, an uncertain future for Liat Airlines. Police in Guyana offer a $3 million Guyanese reward for information about the murder of 3 teenage boys. And much more on the U.S. presidential election and what it means for the Caribbean. Stay with us.
Since the coronavirus, global travel seems risky. But with Promo Caribbean, you don't have to worry. Our COVID-19 alerts feature, coupled with our comprehensive travel guide featuring over 20 countries, contains all you need to keep updated and safe during the pandemic. Whether it's Belize, Barbados, Haiti, or Guyana, Our travel guide has all you need from safe places to eat, transport options, pharmacies, embassies, hotels, and Airbnbs. Not feeling well? You could take the COVID self-assessment test on our app. If you happen to be in the Caribbean or are looking to travel during these uncertain times, then Promo Caribbean is going to be your best friend. Today more than ever, you need to stay informed and stay safe. With Promo Caribbean, you don't have to worry. We've got you. Download the app from the App Store or Play Store now.
Welcome back to Caribbean Times News. And police in Guyana are offering a $3 million Guyanese reward for information leading to the arrest of those involved in the potentially racially motivated murder of 3 teenage boys. Joel Henry, Isaiah Henry, and Haresh Singh's bodies were found in Berbice 2 months ago. Haresh Singh is the grandson of one suspect that has already been arrested. Authorities say that they are exploring every possible lead as investigations into the murders continue. Liat Airlines is facing an uncertain future. The cash-strapped airline still owes former employees approximately $80 million EC dollars in severance payments, but the airline says it does not have the funds to pay them. 500 employees were recently laid off, and an administrator for the airline said they are in discussions with investors who are prepared to address the severance issue. The regional airline was forced to suspend operations following the COVID-19 outbreak. Antigua's prime minister recently said that the government is prepared to collapse the airline if it does not become profitable. Well, now to a U.S. federal judge rejecting a Trump administration plan to make it difficult for immigrants to get green cards if they're using food stamps and other public benefits. The ruling struck down the Trump administration's restrictions that denied many low-income applicants permanent visas because they used benefits like Medicaid. Critics of the controversial policy called it unfair and discriminatory. Well, Grenada's tourism minister says the United Kingdom's new 4-week lockdown will hurt the country's tourism sector. According to the Grenada Tourism Authority, the UK market is the country's second largest for tourism and provides connections to other parts of Europe. The tourism minister said that prior to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's announcement of the lockdown, the number of flights and travelers into the country was encouraging. The authority says that Grenada, which just restarted international flights in October, was happy to have British Airways and Virgin Atlantic coming to the country twice a week. Well, despite the disruption to tourism sectors in many countries, Caribbean Tourism Month is still being observed this November. The Caribbean Tourism Organization's Secretary General Neil Walters said COVID-19's impact on the region changed the theme of this year's Tourism Month to The Caribbean Awaits, which he said is a testament to the success of the Caribbean region in containing the spread of COVID-19. Walters said the theme also complements the 25 Caribbean nations that have either fully or partially reopened their borders to commercial travel. Now, we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, a historic win in the U.S. presidential election. And we are going to talk to Guyanese-born author Yolanda T. Marshall about bringing the flavors of the Caribbean to books for children. Stay with us.
Mac Shack, New York, dedicated to providing a unique dining experience by offering classic, seasonal, and modern creative macaroni and cheese flavors. Find their locations at MacShackNewYork.com. That's MacShackNY.com.
Welcome back to Caribbean Times News and a historic victory in the U.S. presidential election. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris becoming the apparent president and vice president. Now, earlier, we spoke with Marlon Hill. He is an attorney and the host of The People's Politics on Caribbean Rhythms Radio. Marlon, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you post-election.
Now, this was a historic win in so many ways after days of counting. What does it mean for Caribbean Americans and the Caribbean region that Joe Biden is the apparent winner?
It's a big, big deal. I mean, the popular vote has increased to historic levels. And we're looking at states that were different from 2016. You have large Caribbean American populations in states like Georgia, the Philadelphia area. And even though we lost Florida or even Texas, the communities continue to grow there and continue to have an impact on the electoral votes as well.
And now President Trump is making false claims about the election, saying that he was cheated. As an attorney, what do you make of all these lawsuits that the administration is filing?
every citizen, including the president of the United States, who's the head of his party, has the right to file a lawsuit if they feel aggrieved. And then that lawsuit, they have to go through the motions of providing proof, evidence that would lead to prevailing in that lawsuit. So I give him that right. If he feels that he has the right to file a lawsuit, he can certainly do so, even though the circumstances of being able to prove that he's been aggrieved by having unlawful votes be counted, which is at the end of the day, that's the real big question. Are they counting any unlawful votes based on the law of that particular state? Because you have to remember, we live in a federalism society where the states have rights, they make the rules. Pennsylvania has different rules from Georgia. Georgia has different rules from Arizona. Arizona has different rules from Nevada. But right now, Vice President Biden has many pathways to make it to 270 after the lawful legal votes are counted. We should allow that process to go straight through so that we can have every voice of every American, including those of Caribbean descent, to be heard loud and clear.
And now Kamala Harris is making history here as the first woman and the first person of Caribbean descent. It looks like she is headed to the White House as vice president. How significant is her win?
Very significant, huge part of our history. First Black woman, first South Asian Indian woman, first Caribbean American of descent, first HBCU graduate. There's so many firsts for her. And I believe that the entire America should be celebrating this and hoping that we can find a way to unify on celebrating this moment of exceptionalism for us as Americans as well.
Absolutely. And there were a number of Caribbean Americans who also won in congressional and local races. Now, what kind of impact did Caribbean Americans have in this election?
You know, Alisha, representation matters, right? And whenever you have an immigrant community, the beauty of America is that you have various immigrant communities that have matured over the years. The Irish did it, the Polish did it, the Italians did it. The Cubans did it. The Mexicans are doing it. And Caribbean Americans, whether they be from Barbados or St. Lucia or from Trinidad and Tobago or Virgin Islands, they are all becoming part of the American landscape, whether through marriage or whether through family relationships or what they do for a living. It is really a beauty to see, even now, though, that the community is maturing to a place where they can have such a significant impact on the electoral votes. That's when you know that you have fully arrived and you can raise the torch of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, we're really seeing it making impact at all levels in this election. But looking at the congressional races overall, the Republicans did better than many expected. It looks like the Republicans are going to hold the Senate and Mitch McConnell is going to remain the Senate Majority Leader. What does that mean for gridlock in Washington?
You know, it is the current status of the political landscape in America. We still have a lot of apprehension on whether or not they would like to give all the power to one particular party. So they're holding that back as a checks and balances. I think that's what's really occurring, and we really shouldn't be afraid of that. Both parties need to listen very carefully as to what the American public is saying, whether that person is speaking from Detroit, or whether that person is speaking from Atlanta, or whether that person is speaking from Miami. There's some very subtle messages there that both parties should pay very close attention to, because in a snap, we're going to be in 2024 talking about another election cycle. And, you know, irrespective of what's going to happen with the results with this election, I do expect President Trump to still have an impact on the Republican Party. And then also the Democrats are also going to be going through an identity crisis as well. As you look at these different chess pieces across these United States, these blue states, red states may not necessarily be as colorful as they appear to be.
It's an important takeaway. I mean, you have said that every vote counts, and we certainly saw that in so many states that were very close. What lessons should we take away from this election?
Here's some very important lessons. First and foremost, you have to organize on the ground and meet voters where they are. You also have to recognize that America has different layers. Black people, Black voters have different layers. The Black voter in Atlanta is different from the Black voter in Philly. The white voter that is in Detroit is different from the white voter that is in Phoenix, Arizona. So you have to meet voters where they are. You can't make generalizations, including within the Hispanic community. And then both parties are going to have to speak to those different layers and not presume that a person that is of color, because some people don't even want to be referred to as a person of color, depending on who they self-identify themselves as on the U.S. Census. That's another lesson that is going to be at play. Money doesn't mean everything at the end of the day in elections as well. And finally, we must ensure that every person understands the importance of their vote, whether they do it by mail, whether they do it early in person, or they go on election day. I'm hoping that we can move to a legal framework where we can know the results on election day as opposed to waiting days or even weeks. And I think the states need to understand that they need to get on the same page as far as that's concerned.
That would be great. Well, this has been a historic election. Marlon, thank you so mumuch for joining us. That was Marlon Hill, attorney and host of The People's Politics on Caribbean Rhythms Radio. And coming up, we are going to talk with Guyanese-born children's book author Yolanda T. Marshall, and a Nickelodeon resort in the Dominican Republic reopens its doors. That's just ahead.
Mac Shack, New York, dedicated to providing a unique dining experience by offering classic, seasonal, and modern creative macaroni and cheese flavors. Find their locations at macshacknewyork.com. That's MACSHACKNY.com.
Welcome back to Caribbean Times News, and Guyanese-born children's book author Yolanda T. Marshall, who's bringing the culture and flavors of the Caribbean to young readers. Earlier, I spoke with her about what parents and children can get from her books.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So tell me, how did you get into writing children's books?
Well, in 2008, I published a poetry book while I was in my last years of university. And I didn't do anything since then until the birth of my son. And during my nesting phase, I was looking for books, and specifically books with characters of Black boys of Caribbean ancestry living in Canada or the US or the UK, but just a pure representation of who my son will be in this society. And I couldn't find any. And it got to me because when you're having a child and you have to think about your child's future and the society you're bringing it in, and it just eroded a lot of emotions. And I'm like, look, I'm a poet. I published a poetry book in 2008. I can write a kid's story. And I did. I wrote Command's First Carnival. And it came to my mind because it's like, okay, what will my son do as a Caribbean child living in Canada, more so Toronto? He will go to Caribana, right? So I wrote Command's First Carnival, a young Black kid who attended his first carnival, his first Caribana in Toronto. And he experienced stuff like waving a flag and eating jerk chicken and roti and curry and seeing the floats and dancing to soca. And that's how I started. My son inspired me to write that book. And, you know, in return, it will be a title that other parents like myself can find. Yeah.
And your recent book, My Soca Birthday Party with Jollof Rice and Steel Pans, give us a brief journey through that story.
So that story, it just took it up a few notches. And I'm very thankful for Chalkboard Publishing, who, you know, offered me the opportunity to publish this, and Subi Bose is the illustrator from South Africa. And I wanted to incorporate the Caribbean culture with African culture, right? And we live in Toronto. It's a diverse country, and like many other cities in the U.S. and in the U.K., there are a lot of kids within the Caribbean community, and of course, especially as Black children or brown children, they do play and they do party and they dance and they celebrate with kids from African countries. And my son is not only Guyanese background, he's half Kenyan. So this book literally just took characters from each of those worlds and placed them together. So you have Anne, who is, of course, can be born here or in the U.S. or in the U.K. She's a part of diaspora, and her parents are Caribbean, but she loves jollof rice, which is West African, and steel pans, which is like authentically Caribbean. And her friends are from Nigeria, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Uganda, everywhere. And they're comparing dishes. Like in Trinidad and Tobago, you have palau. In Kenya and Tanzania, they eat palau, right? We have like rice and peas or cook up rice in the Caribbean. In Ghana, it's washe. It's the same thing. So you have the kids going, hey, you have this, I'm going to bring this. You have roti, I'm going to bring chapati, both East Indian influence. So the kids are celebrating her birthday, but at the same time, they're celebrating little pieces of themselves, and they're sharing it with her. It's the best gift that a child can have, a group of friends so diverse that she can learn from and explore and have different tastes. Like, palates, you have different tastes in friends, you have different tastes in foods. And that's what it's about. And one thing this book did, it really did highlight chutney soca. Because when I grew up in Guyana, I have East Indian friends. And soca is influenced by East Indian music, by chutney as well, and tassa drums and such. This is how I grew up. And I couldn't find anything like that in storybooks, in children's books, which was sad. It's like it'll be really selfish for me to speak about my Caribbean experience as a Black woman. And it's like, well, my friend is here, we're the same, right? And I'm like, when you put soca in there, I'm like, no, we're going to put some tassa drums and chutney in here too, because that is Caribbean, right? So this book just took all these little kids together and celebrated them as they come together to celebrate Anne's birthday.
It is so important. I have two girls. It's so important that they learn about their culture and learn about other cultures. And I know you also authored a piece of Black Cake for Santa. Now, with the holidays right around the corner, it's kind of the perfect story for kids over the holidays, or the perfect holiday gift. Tell us about that one.
So this book, this is like the illustration is a second edition here. But a piece of Black Cake for Santa was coming for sure, because after Command's first carnival, I go, okay, we need a Christmas book. Christmas is huge for us. Like, I'm that Caribbean kid where every Christmas we painted our homes. We had new blinds, new curtains. You know how Caribbean people do it, right? And I'm like, okay, so you literally open the book and there's, the dad painting, and he's like, it's smelling like Christmas. And she's like, it's just paint. But, for a Caribbean person, it's like, it has a huge significance. And I said, I need a book, like a classic book that will never age, and any kid could have it, because in my home, I ate Black Cake. And if I'm supposed to leave something for Santa, it'll be Black Cake and Mauby and sorrel and pastels and all these foods, right? It really won't be cookies, right? So a piece of Black Cake for Santa really highlighted our traditions. And, you have a kid, of course, from Trinidad and a kid from Barbados, and they're talking about, hey, I'm going to bring pastels, I'm going to bring jug, and just little things that they eat at home and leave it for Santa. But it's just, it's preserving our traditional way of celebrating Christmas and celebrating the kids once again. It's always a big party in my book.
It's a perfect way to teach them and to celebrate those traditions. And very quickly before we go, just tell us, where can parents purchase your books?
So my books are available at Barnes & Noble. You can get them at Barnes & Noble, Amazon for sure. And in Canada, it's in our local bookstores, like a different book list, another storybook. And they're also in, most of them, the new one isn't, but most of them are in Apple iBooks. be headed there. But yeah, it's available everywhere. At least most chains selling books. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, parents, you can put those on your holiday list. Ms. Marshall, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And finally, in our Caribbean Moment by Caribbean Journal, the Dominican Republic's all-inclusive Nickelodeon Hotels and Resorts is reopening its doors. Filled with fun for the kids like SpongeBob SquarePants and Dora the Explorer interactions, the Punta Cana Resort is reopening with a comprehensive health and safety program developed in conjunction with the Mayo Clinic and endorsed by Deepak Chopra. And that does it for this edition of the Caribbean Times News. You can catch us every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern on CaribVision, streaming on Facebook Live Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, on our website at CaribbeanTimesNYC.com, and on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and have a great week.